Welcome to the Growth Plus Exit podcast, where owners of privately held middle market companies talk about founding, scaling, and exiting their businesses successfully. Learn how to maximize and monetize your business on your own terms. Let's get started.
Hello, I'm Heather Bennett, your host for the Growth Plus Exit podcast, featuring business owners talking about founding, scaling, and potentially exiting their businesses successfully. Past guests on the Growth Plus Exit podcast include Kelly Schrod, founder of Data Vision, Jody Jankowski, CEO of Blackline, and Jeff Janicek, founder of InnoFlight. This episode is brought to you by Newport LLC, a team of seasoned C-suite executives who help CEOs of privately held companies grow, de-risk, and exit their businesses successfully. To learn more about Newport, visit us at newportllc.com or find us on LinkedIn. Before introducing today's guests, I want to thank Kim Denny for introducing us. Kim is a managing director and partner with Newport, and you can find much more information about her on LinkedIn or on our Newport website. Today's guests are Stephen Brent May and Hami Arrington, the founders of One Foot Over, a Houston, Texas-based digital marketing agency specializing in bringing customers closer to their B2B clients' brands on the web, and the host of the newly released B2B Happy Hour, which we will definitely talk about later. Hami Arrington serves on the National American Marketing Association board, and she also serves as the chair of the American Marketing Association Foundation, a fundraising organization to support the AMA. Stephen Brent May serves on the Professional Chapters Council for AMA and the board of the Houston chapter of the AMA. The first episode of B2B Happy Hour is live on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And you know it's going to be fun because it has the word happy hour in it. And I love that their origin story started in Chicago. So we'll get to it. Hami and Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
So let's get right into it. How did One Foot Over get started?
Yeah, so Hami, do you want to take it?
Yeah, I'll take this. Yeah, so both Stephen and I, as you can tell, are very involved with the American Marketing Association now, but we've been involved for a long time now. And when I moved to Houston from Atlanta, I joined the AMA board at the local level and started working with Stephen on an award show. We were co-chairs and we had so much fun together. I mean, it really was. It was really like kind of like a magical experience because we just clicked. And so towards the end of our run doing this award show, I had already had a start in an agency. Stephen had taken his career as far as he thought that he could go in the company he was with. And so I said, hey, Stephen, why don't we, we really enjoy working together. Why don't we try to make some money at this? And so we said, all right, let's do this. And that's how we started. And that was a little over 8 years ago now.
Awesome. So, Stephen, where did the Chicago connection come in? Remind me about that.
So when Hami and I met, we were at a conference for board members for the AMA. And I had been to this conference several times, and I saw this person's name on the list from the Houston chapter, didn't know who she was, hadn't met her yet. And when we got to Chicago, we met, introduced ourselves, and throughout the weekend, we just hung out all weekend. And, during the conference, and we said, we should do happy hour when we get back to Houston. And so we came back and chatted. Hami scheduled a happy hour from, I think, 5 to 6. And I was like, that's an odd time for a happy hour. Who does that for just an hour? And so we got together and, hung out for several hours that night, and then afterward just saw each other at AMA events. And we would have eventually met in Houston, but it was really that weekend in Chicago that started the whole thing when we think back on how our story started.
Yeah, and I remember I remember before getting to the conference, because I didn't know anybody, I was brand new. I saw there was a Stephen Brent May that had looked at my LinkedIn profile. I didn't know who he was.
Nice. Oh, and that's such a good, I mean, I always use that when I'm as a marketing person, I'm always telling people like before you go to conferences, when do you do pre-conference training? So I've done pre-conference training. And one of the things is I'm like, go ahead and look and see who else is going to be there and make a point to reach out ahead of time because you know you're going to want to spend time with them. So I love that. Such a great story. Good example. Good example of good marketing. I like it. So talk about those early days. So, you obviously didn't start in a garage. I can see you're in an office, but what was it like starting the business from scratch?
So I'll jump in here. It was a slow start in a sense, but it was also a fast start. When we decided to really make a go at it and start an agency, I believe we started the official paperwork in April of 2017. And I was still working for my previous company. And, we did all of the behind the scenes things, all of the administrative work, and we were meeting on the weekends and the evenings trying to figure out who our markets were, what services we were going to offer. And we got to October of that year and I said, all right, it's time to pull the plug. I'm going to put in my notice, leave my job. And so it was officially October when I left, and we worked from our homes in the beginning. And that lasted about a month and a half. And as somebody that had been in an office all the time, I was like, I cannot work from home. This is not for me. And we got a space at WeWork. And so our first office we still joke about it. We have an 8x10 rug in our current office that took up the entire space of our first office. And so we still look at that rug and we're like, this was our office when One Foot Over started, essentially.
Yeah, we eventually we ended up having 3 people in that office, which I think is just so wild to think about now.
You're very close. So if something comes up, you just turn, right?
And Hami and I shared an office till about probably 3 years ago, even though we had plenty of space, but we were just so used to sharing an office. And it got to the point where we were on so many Zoom calls and meetings that we're like, we've got the space to separate. We probably should, but we have, if we had to go back to sharing an office, it wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah. I'm still yelling. We're next door to each other. I'm still yelling around the corner to him.
I think that's a good sign of a good partnership, when you have that level of comfort with each other that you can share the close space. So that's great. So tell me about some of the turning points or we'll say roadblocks or things that have come up that you probably didn't expect when you were starting this business.
I can take one. So when we first started, our gut was that we wanted to be B2B. I came from a B2C background. As I was growing up, my family had an advertising agency and I worked in it for a while, and that's where I came up. But I really didn't like it anymore because of the pace. It felt like more tactical than strategic for a lot of it. And so I had gone back to school and realigned to B2B. That said, when we started the agency, we just really didn't know anything about niching or finding who our market was. We were like, the world is our oyster. Let's go ahead and start just trying to get clients, right? We were trying to get this thing off the ground. And so we did experiment a little bit with B2C and then quickly realized why we didn't like it and why I reminded myself of why I didn't want to be in B2C anymore. And it is that strategic piece of it. I really like to think about things. We both do. We like to think about things in like a 360 view. We want to think things through completely. And with what we know for sure with B2B is that is the key to success is making sure that, we're thinking not only what the goal is, but who are the people, who is the audience that we are talking to, and do we understand them? How do they react to things? Because it's, as we know with B2B, the buying cycles, well, at least with the clients that we deal with, the buying cycles can be, 18 months. We have a client that has a 10-year life cycle, which is so wild, buying cycle, which is so wild. But you really have to think through, like, what does that really look like, and really kind of flex and flow as the market changes.
And I think for me, one of the turning points was probably three and a half years in. I can't remember exactly when it was. Hami and I went to a workshop in Chicago based on the recommendation from another agency owner. And it was put on by AMI, which is the Agency Management Institute. And prior to that workshop, like, we really, we were trusting our gut, but we were, kind of doing napkin math and figuring out when we could hire based on revenue, and didn't really have formulas and things in place to know, like, what is the right, salary per full-time employee at what revenue level. And so that workshop really reframed how we thought about running the business and gave us a set of formulas and numbers and kind of guideposts to look at. And I would say, had we been exposed to that earlier in the journey, I don't know that it would have stuck or made as much sense for us. But I think where we were at that time, it was exactly what we needed. And it was the tool set we needed to take it to the next level. And, I always think about that as a big turning point for the way specifically that we manage the agency.
Excellent. And that's so true. There's those certain milestones where you're ready, you're poised for growth. And if you don't have the tools to help you get there, we always talk about what got you here is not going to get you where you're going. And sometimes that means making some major shift. And a lot of times it could be in talent. So talk about that. Like, how did you decide who to bring in and when to bring in additional talent?
Hami, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. So I think for us, it was just, we were maxed out. I think their first hire, we were just saying that, we're maxed out. So we can't do anymore. We can't grow anymore without help. And so I think that that was, a gut decision. We were saying that, what we can afford is a marketing coordinator. So let's go hire a marketing coordinator. I would say that the best piece of advice that we ever got was from another agency owner here in town, and their agency is I think 10 years older than us, or 12 years older than us. And he said to us very early on, you need to find somebody that will be client facing, so somebody who can handle the day-to-day with the clients, and that will free you up to be able to do these business strategic things. And there's another layer there between you and the client, so that it can be managed more effectively. Because as owners, this is one thing that we found, is that as owners, we're going to give more because we know we can do it. And so we're saying, oh yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. But realistically, that's not really the best use of our time and resources to just do everything the client wants. Because a lot of times, again, it goes back to this, you need to be strategic on what we're doing. So anyway, so that, I think I would say that that's probably been our most important hire, is somebody who is the day-to-day interface with the client.
Yeah. And one thing that I remember, we heard from a friend of ours, a former client, and he's also an EOS implementer. He said at one point when he was talking about hiring, and he said, you're either going to pay for it now or you're going to pay for it later. And so when you're thinking about, salaries, and you might be like, well, let's lowball it and bring in like lower level talent for, to keep the revenue or whatever that might be, that stuck with me. Like, if you're going to pay for it, you're either going to pay for it now or later. And so it probably makes more sense to hire that more senior person if you can, and I know that revenue comes into play there, but, really be strategic about those hires and make sure you're not just hiring entry level because you want to keep that revenue for yourself. Like, make smart decisions.
Yeah, that's so true, especially with as you're building in those early days, those first, like, I'd say 10 employees. tend to be the most important hires that you need in order to get your business off the ground. And you just don't have the luxury of making a bad hire at that point. So
No.
I think your comments like both like really support that, and you saw it happening live, which is great. Um, so tell me about the vision for your company. Uh, what do you see happening in the future? What are some changes? I know you had mentioned some shifts to talking more about marketing strategy and really the clarity before the tactics. So tell me what that means to you.
Yeah. So I'll kind of start with the beginning of the company before we talk about the future, because when Hami and I first started, the reason we wanted to do this was because, we saw all of this work being done for clients, and there's some great work that comes out of Houston. And we co-chaired that awards gala. And so we're seeing like the best work. And, I was on the corporate side. I worked with agencies. And so I had experience as an in-house marketer. And we said, you know what, we really feel like clients deserve better than what we're seeing sometimes. And, it's not a dig on other agencies. There are great agencies out there, but we were seeing clients that were getting cookie cutter work and just this repeatable, we're going to put you in a box because this is the product we sell. And we started out saying, like, we feel like clients deserve better. And our original mission was to just do really good marketing work. And over the years, we had tweaked that mission and added words to it. And I think about a year and a half ago, we sat down and we said, what is our mission? Like, what are we really trying to do? And we went back to like day one. And we're like, we really just want to do good work and make our clients look like rock stars. And so that, we realized that never changed. That's the ethos of who we are. Our mission never changed, even though we may have changed the words. But that's how it started. And I think as we think about the future, that doesn't change. We still believe clients deserve great marketing and we want to make them look like rock stars. How we get there with that, that's what's changing a little bit. But Hami can kind of talk about this idea of like the clarity before tactics and what that looks like for us.
Yeah. So, I mean, what we see out there is a lot of this cookie cutter stuff, right? And for a while, I would say that we have been trying to really kind of emulate that too. Not the same campaign for all of our clients, but we've been trying for a little while, and this is a little bit of a peek behind the curtain a little bit. We've been trying for a while to make this more of a standard offering, right? How we work with our clients. And what we found is the people that we tend to attract and the people that we tend to do the best work for, everything is, I don't want to say 100% custom, but we are definitely thinking things through and being more strategic about the activities that we participate in, because the markets that we're in are so niche. Their audiences are fairly small. They're hard to reach, and so you really just can't, throw an ad out there and think that it's going to convert into a lead. You really have to be very specific in the way that you're talking to them. And so, thinking we took a step back over the last few months, Stephen and I did, and we said, really, what is this? How do we really want to move forward with this company? Because trying to make this into, a standardized process, that's very hard. That's been very hard for us. And so we're saying that, we really identified like what is the real problem here? And really it's the strategy piece, right? What's happening is a lot of marketers, especially in this market, over the last 8 or 9 months, have been leaning just straight on the tactics. And what we're seeing out there is they're just not, they're not really hitting what the goals that they've set out in front of themselves, because they're not thinking about really what is going to work and what's not going to work. A lot of times it is throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what works. And I want to acknowledge that there is some value there. But if you're looking at the long term, it's much better to take just a half a beat and really think about what are you trying to do, get some clarity there. Who is your customer? do you know them? Do you know what their motivations are? Do you know really how you solve their problems? And so that's what we're talking about, is like this clarity before tactics, is make sure that you know what you're doing before you start executing on things, so that your resources are the most optimized.
Yeah. And I know there's a lot of times there's this fear of, well, if we stop what we're doing and spend 6 months focused on the strategy to build that out, like we've lost 6 months of momentum. And we see that, we get that. And, our recommendation is never like, let's stop marketing altogether while we reshift. But at the end of the day, like if you're a business owner, you're a small business, you're a mid-sized business that's scaling, we have to be really clear about like where you're trying to go. If you're a $50 million company trying to get to $100 million, we shouldn't stop marketing while we figure out the strategy for that. Let's keep, brand ads running. Let's keep email marketing going while we're building the strategy that gets you to $100 million. It's not about like, let's stop and completely pivot. It's like, we can keep it moving and keep the wheels on the bus while we figure out how to make this bus move faster.
That's wonderful. I talk about that as the basic marketing level. Like you want to have that marketing that's so outstanding and so brilliant that it really drives growth and does revenue. But at the same point, there's a basic required level. You got to have a website. You got to do basic email marketing. If you've done a newsletter every month for the last 5 years, guess what? You've got to keep pumping that. Like there's that basic level where you're going to get revenue growth, where you're going to get that outstanding change, is going to happen with that higher level stuff. And that higher level strategy. And so, but you still can't ignore the fact that you have to have the basics running.
And that's so relatable because we, 5-6 years ago, we started a weekly newsletter. And I think we're on issue like 365 at this point, if not more. But there are weeks where we're like, God, it's so much work putting this together every week. And as an agency, a lot of times we've been like, the classic cobbler's kids have no shoes, where we've put our marketing on the back burner. But that's the one thing that we've done consistently for, hundreds of weeks. And every time we think about, well, maybe we put the brakes on that, or maybe we stop that and focus on other things, we get a message or somebody sees us out where they're like, oh my God, I loved the newsletter last week, or I loved that article you all shared. And we're like, okay, we got to keep this going. So that's such a relatable example that you shared.
Absolutely. And just talking about how, your core competency is really meeting your mission, and the fact that you provide that bespoke offering, and that's what makes, your company stand out. And I think a lot of successful entrepreneurs needed to take the time to figure that out. Like what is it that we're doing that no one else like us does? And why would anyone want to hire us over? And that's something that it's really hard when you're starting out, because you're so focused on the passion of why you created and all that, to focus on it. So this is just such a nice evolution, like hearing all the different phases that you've gone through while building this company. This is just such a great evolution for where you guys are going next. So speaking about where you're going next, let's talk about the podcast. How did you decide to do this? Tell us a little bit about it. I've gotten to listen to the first episode. So we'll just go for it. Tell me all about it.
I'll let Stephen talk about the B2B Happy Hour.
I mean, I think ultimately, like, we realize there aren't enough podcasts out there.
Yeah.
I'm completely joking. Hami and I, like, from our origin story, we met in Chicago, and the first thing we did, we got back to Houston, was a happy hour. And throughout the years of owning the business, we used to have what we called like family dinner on Friday. We would go to happy hour after work and usually end up going to dinner after with our spouses, some team members, clients, and people would be like, oh, let me know next time you guys do happy hour. And so everybody wanted in on these happy hours. And Hami and I we shared that office together for years. We're right beside each other. We're always in the office talking about marketing, talking about business. And that goes into happy hour. A lot of times we're sitting there drinking after work, and our spouses are like, oh my God, can you all please stop talking about work? And we're like, maybe we just turn the happy hour into a podcast because people want to get invited to it. This kind of gives them that peek behind the curtain of the conversations we're having in the office. And, we're like, we can probably do this ourselves. And so right now it is fully self-produced. We had fun putting it together. We got rid of the idea of perfection and said, you know what, let's launch it and then perfect it after. And we gave ourselves a hard date when we started it. We said, we have got to launch it before the end of August. And we just put a plan in place. And I think the old Hami and the old Stephen would have probably drugged this out for another year, trying to make sure we had everything just right. But we gave ourselves a date and we got it out there. And we're really proud that we were able to launch it. And episode 2 actually launched this morning. So
yeah. Perfect. I will put that on my listen list for sure. So the podcast is the two of you discussing all these great marketing ideas. And I know the first episode you brought up some really interesting, I'm trying to encourage people to listen to the first episode, some really interesting perspectives and I would say wisdom about what's going on with AI and how has interjected itself into marketing for the last so many years, but now where it's at right now and what we need to expect in the future. So definitely worth listening to. Where do you see the podcast going in the future? What else do you guys want to do with this?
Well, we've gone back and forth between whether or not we were going to do seasons or is this an ongoing podcast. I think that this is an internal struggle. I think that yesterday we decided that it's going to be an ongoing podcast, but maybe we might take a break here or there. But in the future, right now on the content calendar, we're working through some topics that we've put forth that we really think that is important to talk about. And in the future, we do want to have guests on the podcast. I would say season 2, but probably in the next maybe 6 months or so, we'll probably say, Stephen, you and I, we have talked about all the things that we need to talk about together. We probably need to bring some more people into this conversation.
I think that's a great idea. And who are your ideal guests? Who would you love to interview?
My number one would be Rand Fishkin from SparkToro, founded Moz. I've been a huge fan of his for years. So that's probably my number one dream guest.
And I would say Andy Cristodina and Christopher Penn. Andy has been instrumental in helping us do good marketing work. Really admire Urban Media. And Christopher Penn has helped us with a lot of AI things. And so I'd love to have a conversation with him. He's just so smart and so practical and relatable.
Excellent. No, and I know a few of them, and they are excellent podcast guests, and are I would say all 3 of them are so generous to the marketing community in terms of giving and sharing knowledge and really helping all of us bring better work to our clients, which I think is a gift. Just good.
And I would say that's a philosophy that we share too, is this idea of just being really helpful. And I think that's why those 3 people stand out to us, because they don't withhold information. They're not gating everything and saying well, you've got to give up something for me to share knowledge. And that's part of our philosophy of let's just be as helpful as we can, and people are going to respond to that.
I guess you could say help us do better marketing.
Yes, exactly. And I can see that from both of you because of how much you give back through your efforts with the American Marketing Association, and your volunteer time that's really we'll say raising the standards for the industry, and those are the people that are going to do it, are the ones who are willing to give more and to share, which is terrific. Okay, let's talk about personal things. What are some of, we'll say, the daily rituals or life hacks that you use as business owners uh, to get through and keep building this business?
Well, I have two. I'm an early morning person, so I work out almost every morning, and it clears my mind. So I used to be a marathon runner way back, way back when, and what I trained myself to do when I was running is to work through problems. Enter the run saying, okay, this is the intention of this run, and work through the problems that maybe need some, just some thought, the open thought. When you're running, it's just you and your feet. So it's really like this open time. Now I do cycling, indoor cycling, and during that time period, I'm still working through things. So number one is definitely working out so that you can clear your mind, and keeps the stress levels down. And then obviously there's so many other good things that happen at that time too. When you do work out. But the second thing is, after I work out, when I'm getting ready, I actually have ChatGPT on my phone and I'm talking to it throughout my morning routine. And that's really kind of the second level of working through problems and issues and thought processes, and really thinking through so that I can get some clarity for whatever the issue is at hand. And I found that has been super helpful. So then by the time I get to the office, I have ideas, I'm refreshed, and I've gotten everything off of my mind that I need to get off of my mind.
Awesome. All right, Stephen, what are your life hacks?
So, I mean, a few for me are, I play piano, so I do spend time like decompressing by just playing music, producing music a little bit on the computer. Just it's something that doesn't require a lot of brain power, which is after a full day of working and thinking about work and the hours outside of the office. That's that time where I can decompress. But I also, every night before I go to bed, I read something that is like fiction or autobiographies. Like, I have to do something that's not business related or work related so I can turn my brain off before going to sleep. And I know that people say you shouldn't have lights and stuff in the bed, and I have my Kindle, but it helps me kind of reset my brain to not go to sleep thinking about the problems of clients or work. And that way I can wake up and, not be dreaming about business problems throughout the night.
There's such excellent examples. I thank you for sharing. I wish we had more time. I could honestly talk to you guys for days. But what I'm excited about is I'll get to hear from you through your podcast. So definitely, to learn more about Hami and Stephen, please visit getOneFootOver.com, their website, or find them on LinkedIn. And of course, I'm encouraging anyone in the B2B marketing space, in the marketing space, to listen to their podcast, B2B Happy Hour. Hami, Stephen, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. And I just can't wait to hear the conversations that you have going forward. Thank you.
Thanks for having us. And here's an open invite to be a guest on B2B Happy Hour in season 2.
Thank you. I'm all in. Absolutely.
So,
thank you so much.
Thanks, Heather. It's been really fun.
Thank you for listening to the Growth Plus Exit podcast, sponsored by Newport, a unique national business advisory firm. If you enjoyed this show, be sure to share, like, and subscribe for future episodes.